Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this Monday morning. Wow, what a weekend of college football. I think a lot of people, they look at these games, they're just going to be easy routes in between a lot of the rivalry games. And I don't think you feel that way if you're an Auburn fan. And you have to go back and look at other programs that had a similar loss and how they bounced back from it. I know Florida State in second year of Mike Norvell was there. They lost to Jacksonville State. Nick Saban's first year at LSU, they lost to UAB. Of course, that's not the worst loss. That's a pretty good football program now. And he lost to ULM in his first year at Alabama. New Mexico State, I think they were a 24-point underdog. Alabama paid UT Chattanooga $600,000 to come for their beating in Tuscaloosa. Auburn allegedly, I want to confirm this, paid New Mexico State $1.85 million. Are you kidding me? For that, arguably in the annals of history, the worst loss for Auburn since 1950 against Wofford. That's got to be, I really can't think of one. Now, look, New Mexico State's pretty good. Jerry Kill is a very good coach, but Auburn doesn't lose to teams like that. An SEC team should never lose to a team like that. So, it's college football in 2023. Everybody's got players, and ultimately that was about Hugh Freeze, the coaches, and those players didn't look like they gave a damn Saturday, and that was sad. You ought to refund the fans their money. That was, again, arguably the most pathetic effort I've ever seen out of an Auburn football team. They deserve no mercy. It's always darkest before dawn, though, and I'm hoping if you're an Auburn fan, that's the low point, and they'll turn around from here because these last few years have been rough, really, really rough. All right, let's get into some rough stuff. Mitch Davis, host of the MitchDavisShow.com. Mitch, a few years back, Mississippi State and Southern Miss would have been a headliner. Everybody would have been talking about it. Saturday, you had an interim coach, Greg Knox, and Will Hall and Southern Miss had just been horrible this year. I thought they would be much better. I had much higher expectations for them, but where do you go from here? And I guess in your case, you're just glad you got to win because not everybody got to win Saturday when they thought they were going to have a big fat turkey dinner served up for them. It's just not how it works anymore. Never has.
Rob, thank you. Rob, thank you so much for having me on. Hopefully I fixed the audio problems from last week. I'm using my AirPods this week, my AirPod Pros. So we're going to see if that works a little bit better.
Yeah, I think try the old audio. It's a lot clearer when you do it.
Okay.
Yeah, you try that one. But yeah, let's try that one. The old way.
Give me 1 second. We take out these AirPods.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and look, college football with the portal is what it is. I just NIL, I think it's overrated, but everybody's got players now. Every team that you play, Mitch, you're not going to show up and go boo and get a W like again, say like it used to be, but if you're a 24-point favorite and you're an SEC school playing in between, a big rivalry game, you got to show up. There's no excuse.
Yeah, and the difference with Mississippi State is, the one thing about Mississippi State, one, it's Egg Bowl week. There's a lot of excitement. Greg Knox, the interim head coach, he was riding into the locker rooms. I don't know, Rob, if you saw it. He was riding in on the four-wheeler and bumping some good music, and he was having fun, man. The guys were having fun. Yes, they didn't blow out Southern Miss the way that they should have. But, Rob, in those in-state games, we see it all the time when, Sanford, UAB, Western Kentucky, they play Kentucky, U of L. Those in-state Sun Belt Conference USA teams, man, they like to play the big boys a little bit tougher. But it was a good win. It was the 5th win of the season. Mississippi State now welcomes Ole Miss to the Egg Bowl. Weird, crazy, odd, whatever you want to say, things happen in the Egg Bowl. I'm not saying Mississippi State's going to win because they got a tall task. Ole Miss has got a hell of an offense over there. Defense is a little questionable. If Mississippi State can put together a full 60 on offense, they could have a shot. It is going to be difficult, but it is the Egg Bowl. I can tell you, Rob, I can tell you how many times Ole Miss or Mississippi State comes into the Egg Bowl wanting to ruin the hopes and dreams of the other one, and they actually do it. They play spoiler. Greg Knox came in as interim head coach, and I've heard when the new coaching staff does take over, that there is going to be a boat of positivity and a boat of like, hey, keep Greg Knox on the coaching staff because he brought some swagger, he brought some funness. He made Mississippi State football fun on Saturday. It was a great crowd, as about as well as you could expect for an 11 a.m. Matchup against a Sun Belt team. About 55,000. So the upper deck was a little spotty. Lower level was great. Atmosphere was fun. Hey, a win's a win. Now it's Egg Bowl week, and like I said, crazier, weird stuff happens in the Egg Bowl every year. So who knows what's going to happen this year?
Yeah, and Ole Miss has a chance for this season to be 10-2 in the regular season, and then go to a bowl game and get 11 wins. So they've got a lot to play for. I think looking at this season, what we're learning is it's hard to get a team really close together when 30 or 40% of them are portal guys, and then the high school guys. That's normal. They're new, but I think that this will work itself out because the players will start realizing, moving schools like that, it doesn't help. And I think that they're already, the first time you transfer, you get immediate eligibility. What they need to do is go back and say, look, during the virus lockdowns, they let anything go. And in hindsight, that's not good. And they shouldn't have. I can understand occasional waivers, but we need to get back to there are consequences in college football when you make stupid decisions.
Well, Rob, I think that one thing with the difference in Ole Miss and Mississippi State, Ole Miss hits the transfer portal very hard. That is Ole Miss's bread and butter. Yeah. That is what Lane Kiffin does. Mississippi State, on the other hand, Rob, I don't know the number right off the top of my head. I'm not looking at the roster. But Mississippi State has several guys, I think upward of half the roster from the state of Mississippi that has either played at JUCO schools in Mississippi or has come out of factory football programs like Starkville High, Tupelo High School. So you got guys on the Mississippi State roster who understands, hey, this is what the Egg Bowl is all for. This is why you come to Mississippi State. It's to compete against Ole Miss. This is why you come and really just pour out your blood and your tears into one of the state schools. The guys at Ole Miss, I'm not saying they don't know what this rivalry is about because every Ole Miss fan is pouring into those guys saying, hey, this is the Egg Bowl. You're supposed to go beat the hell out of Mississippi State. That's what the Ole Miss faithful is telling those guys. But when you've got guys that are coming in from all over, from California and Jackson Dart, you've got guys from out west, you got guys from out east, up north. They don't necessarily understand the ramifications of the Egg Bowl. Where at Mississippi State, I mean, the quarterback and running back are from the state of Mississippi. Will Rogers from Browne, Mississippi, understands this rivalry. His brother is the backup center at Southern Miss. We saw this last year. Ole Miss fans get into the Egg Bowl, yes. But Mississippi State players understand the Egg Bowl itself a lot better than the Ole Miss players there in Oxford.
Well, you talk about guys from other parts of the country. And that I go back 10 years ago, a lot of the SEC schools would have guys from 15 and 20 different states. But that was before the portal. I think if a guy comes in from another part of the country his junior or senior year via the portal, it is a little more difficult. But if you've got guys that have been there since they were freshmen and they've been there for 3 or 4 years, doesn't matter where they're from, they'll figure it out. But you do lean on the in-state kids to remind them of the importance of it. I mean, you look at Mississippi State with Ole Miss, and again, Southern Miss used to be a much bigger rivalry if they play Memphis. Now it's going to change because of the Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC. What's going to happen is, this is what I think is going to happen. Right now, it's about even, the number of schools that want a 1-7 model and a 3-6 model. But when Greg Sankey is not going to call for a vote, until he is absolutely confident that he'll have a majority. And Texas and OU, I think, will come in and we'll go to a 3-6. But either way, if I'm not mistaken, Mitch, you'll play every team in the league at least 2 times every 4-year cycle. That's better than what we have now.
And Rob, and that's another thing. And I kind of want to piggyback off the in-state kids. And this is, I've been getting a lot of heat, Rob, on Twitter about my rankings of the rivalries this week, of just intensity and heatedness and hatedness. To me, the Egg Bowl is the best rivalry in college football, and here's why: because you've got so many in-state kids. Ole Miss doesn't have as many as Mississippi State, but they have 20 or 30 on the roster from all over. They went and recruited some kids from Starkville High School. They've got a Mississippi State transfer on their roster. These kids in the state of Mississippi, you are groomed to hate the other. Like I married into Mississippi State. I had no clue. I've been to Egg Bowls, and when Coach Freeze was coaching at Ole Miss, and went with him, and was always around the rivalry. But until you move down here and you go to high school football games, you go to the grocery store, the hate that Mississippi State and Ole Miss people have for each other spills over into the kids. So when you get a kid, let's say Will Rogers, who grew up an Ole Miss fan and grew up, a diehard Rebel fan, Ole Miss never gave him the chance and never gave him the time of day. He has developed that hate for Ole Miss now. So that's kind of what the rivalry means. And I get it. The Iron Bowl is a special thing. I've ranked that at number 2. Ohio State, Michigan, I've never been around that rivalry. From the outside looking in, it doesn't have the same weight that the Egg Bowl, that the Iron Bowl, and I get it's a national spectrum or whatever, but a rivalry is supposed to be about hate for the other one. And that's what the Egg Bowl has. I mean, Rob, how many times have we seen the Egg Bowl have fights and, mayhem happen on the fields? That's what makes the Egg Bowl so special. And because it's 2 different people groups, you have the Ole Miss people who are, and I have a lot of good Ole Miss people that treat me very well there, who are rich, who have a lot of money, who are, your lawyers, your doctors. And then you have the Mississippi State people who are agriculture, who are engineer, blue collar, don't have the money that Ole Miss has. That's why what makes this rivalry so dadgum special. You can come here in New Albany, Mississippi, Rob, and we're 35 minutes away from Oxford and about 52 from Starkville. You could cut our population in half, and half of them would be maroon and white, and half of them would be powder blue and red. So that's what that rivalry means to the state. And also, I know Alabama. I went to the Auburn game, and Auburn people hate Alabama, and Alabama fans hate Auburn. But their fan bases are very similar because they don't have that elitist attitude that Ole Miss does there in Oxford.
Well, Mississippi State's got plenty of wealthy people. Your engineering school produces a lot of really wealthy people. That $100 million gift Mississippi State got back in the spring was probably from somebody in petroleum engineering or something like that they gave that gift from Houston. There's a law school at Ole Miss, but there's a lot of Mississippi State people like John Grisham who went to law school at Ole Miss. I'll tell you the difference that, and I mean, you're younger than I am, but I'll say this: a rivalry, you can also respect your rival. And I do think that there's a lot more hatred between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I think between Auburn and Alabama, there's plenty of hate. But I also think there's a lot of respect because the fan bases have both won a lot. Alabama, like nobody else. And that rivalry gets down to it's really personal. And then with the Ole Miss and Mississippi State, it's the players. You won't see a fight on the field in the Iron Bowl. You'll see a fight in a heartbeat on the field in the Egg Bowl. So it's fun for TV. But I think that Michigan, Ohio State it's a different rivalry. And Michigan has to do well recruiting in the state of Ohio to do well. They don't have that many players in the state of Michigan. They just don't. All right, but the rivalries are what we love about college football. Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. Ole Miss, Arkansas is a rivalry. They tried to make LSU Arkansas one. It's not as much. They're trying to do Arkansas, Missouri, but it's going to work out now with Arkansas getting to play Texas. Now, they've only played Oklahoma 15 times in 131 years of college football. But I think that'll be a rivalry just for the fact that they're border states right there together. But what you've got to do in a conference, like A&M, has Georgia ever played at College Station?
No,
I don't think
not
so.
since they joined the SEC.
Yeah, that's my point. And so a conference is not it's not a strong conference if the schools don't regularly play one another. But I would like to see the 3-6. The reason I think a lot of schools want the 1-7 is they've got to have those 4 non-conference games because they're worried about being bowl eligible. That's what that boils down to, Mitch. That's my take.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair thing. I think, when you look at, I know Mississippi State for a fact, they've got some kind of deal with, well, now it's the old Pac-12, but they're playing like Arizona State non-conference. I think next year is Arizona State, if I'm not mistaken. I know I think it was one of the Arizona schools. Ole Miss, they're scheduling with like Cal and Stanford, and I know Auburn went out to Cal this year. So those non-conference are very important. But what we're seeing now, man, is some of these SEC teams are going out there and scheduling some big boys. Alabama had Texas this year.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a lot of fun to get those big non-conference games to kind of prep you for the SEC.
No, I agree with that. Hey, are there any more SEC coaches that will be fired? Tommy in Memphis is asking. And,
Awesome.
they're who you think the possum?
Let me phrase this. The possibility of Coach Mark Stoops leaving Kentucky is very legitimate. I think if the right job opened up, because Fritz, we talked about this on the show. If Fritz or whatever his name is, Fritz or whatever,
Iowa
retires,
yeah,
could be the possibility where Coach Stoops. I don't think anybody else will be fired or be shocked if somebody else. We saw Sam Pittman get the nod of, hey, we're going to give him one more year. I love Sam Pittman. I think that's a great thing for Arkansas. Kentucky is I have to be careful what I say there because I haven't confirmed anything, but Kentucky is a program that I feel like Coach Stoops realizes that he has done just about everything he can at Kentucky. And Kentucky is a program that 8-9 wins should be the expectation. Go to the Outback Bowl, go to the Citrus Bowl, Music City. Those are great bowl games. But when the SEC expands with Texas and Oklahoma, Kentucky is going to be farther down the pecking order because, yes, they've improved. But even though they've improved and they're finishing in the top 25, top 30 nationally in recruiting, they're still finishing 12th or 13th in the SEC behind everybody else because, yes, they have to go in Ohio, but they're getting the 3rd, 4th, 5th best player in Ohio instead of the 1st, 2nd pick in Ohio like Michigan, Ohio State are. I think Coach Stoops realizes that he has a limited ceiling at Kentucky. And another one to watch out for, Rob, and again, I've talked to a couple Ole Miss people, Lane Kiffin. There is a lot more undertone smoke to Lane Kiffin to go in, maybe not this year, but maybe down the line, maybe to a Texas A&M or an Oregon, where the NIL collective money is a lot larger. The facilities are a little bit nicer. He has a little bit more resources to recruit because, like Coach Stoops, I think the ceiling for Ole Miss is 10-2 on a really good year, and 9-3, 8-4 is the expectation of Ole Miss. It has been for the last 80 years. I don't know why. Yes, you should expect to win every game, but you also have to face reality when you go, okay, hey, this is what we're up against. We're up against having to play Alabama, LSU, Georgia every freaking year. You're Ole Miss, you're going, okay, like we can't. Those are 3 losses normally in a normal year.
Well, you should always expect to win every game. Yeah. Then you got to say, well, are we all in? I mean, Tony Barnhart referenced this conversation on Thursday when Kirby Smart was at Alabama and he interviewed for the Alabama job. He said, look, if you're in it to win big, and go big, I'll come. I'll be your coach. But if you're not, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
So Georgia was winning, 9, 10 games, 11 some years for 15 years there with Mark Richt.
And something to watch out for, Robin. And well, I see the Egg Bowl, and I kind of want to come back to that comment. One thing to watch out for is an athletic director change in the SEC. There has been talk, and I don't. Again, I have not been able to fully confirm everything that I've been hearing. But there has been talk to where Mitch Barnhart at the University of Kentucky could step aside and kind of let fresh new blood come in and kind of revamp that Kentucky athletic department. Because if we're being honest, the University of Kentucky athletic department is not where it needs to be. Basketball is struggling. They haven't had any success since 2017. Football since the last 3 or 4 years since the feud with Coach Cal. Football has been struggling. Baseball fails to get out of the super regional almost every year. Women's basketball, they just went down the Florida Gulf Coast and lost by 35 yesterday. So the UK athletic department is struggling. I like Mitch Barnhart. I think he's a great guy. My dad's a season ticket holder. Mitch Barnhart's been very nice to season ticket holders. But sometimes you just need fresh blood. The guy's been in the office for 25 years. It's kind of time to revamp things and kind of get a new fresh blood in there. So those are some things to watch out for SEC fans.
Yeah, and looking at the Egg Bowl, for people that are not from Mississippi and right around there, they don't understand it, and you do have to educate them. But Barnhart been at Kentucky 25 years.
I want to say I think it's between 18 and 25. I don't know the exact.
It's a long time. That's way longer than anybody else ever gets to be.
Oh gosh, who did he take over for? It was back in the early 2000s. I mean, he made the hire of Billy Gillespie. He made the hire of Joker Phillips. Made the hire of Kyra Elzy for taking over the women's basketball. He negotiated the terrible contracts of Mark Stoops and Coach Cal. I mean, Coach Cal is a lifetime contract, but then you got Mark Stoops making $9 million a year, and he's one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in college football. And what has he done? I mean, I respectfully, what has he done in the grand scheme of college football?
Well, they'll talk about 2 10-win seasons in the last 4 years, now 5 years, now 6 years. It's going to be getting further and further in the rearview mirror. I think he's done all he can do at Kentucky. It's time for a change of scenery. 10 years at any school, unless you're Nick Saban, is a long time.
And I think Kirby Smart. I think Kirby Smart will retire at Georgia. I think he's just one of those. And Rob, we can talk about this. I put this out there. I know you and I have texted about this. Kirby Smart, to me, was one of the glue and the fabric that held Alabama together when Alabama was making that run in 2009 and whenever he was on staff. When you look at the success that Kirby Smart has had, he was so instrumental in what Alabama was doing. Now that he's at Georgia, man, Georgia's a factory. I mean, look at how many – the entire Philadelphia Eagles defense is an entire Georgia defense. I mean, they got Nakobe Dean on there. They've got a whole Georgia Bulldogs group of junkyard dogs on there. To me, when I look at the success of Kirby Smart and I look at the success of Nick Saban, Kirby Smart was part of that glue and that fabric that held Alabama together while he was there in Tuscaloosa.
It was big, but you had Jeremy Pruitt there, you had Kevin Steele there, and what people always will tell you, Kirby Smart was really good at halftime adjusting when he would talk to Nick Saban. Jeremy Pruitt adjusted in real time. Kevin Steele brings that tough culture, hard, get after your ass. They all bring something, but there were a lot better assistants in those years. But in the 9 years Kirby was at Alabama, they won the national championship 4 times, 09, 11, 12, and 15. And I think that he's going to win another one this year. I mean, they're just getting better at the right time. And I look around at college football. Who are the up-and-coming top coaches? Who would you get? If you're Kentucky, you got it. Athletic directors have got to stop making these lifetime contracts. That's just basically the coach has to be scared for his job.
Yeah,
because that'll motivate them to work harder. If they've got nothing to worry about and they'll be wealthy beyond their wildest dreams, what are they worried about? Cal gets away with it because he's funny and he does good interviews. He's charismatic and all, but they have not won a national championship at Kentucky since 2012. That, for all the resources and all the emphasis on basketball at Kentucky, that is unacceptable for what their standard is and should be, Mitch.
So I'll answer the Kentucky question first, and then I want to spend like 2 or 3 minutes on talking about who I'm hearing about Mississippi State, and I got to go. For Kentucky, it's got to be somebody that do an offensive mind. I mean, football is such an offensive minded thing. If Mark Stoops were to leave, I would look at the coach from Texas State. I think his name is G.J. Keene, if I'm not mistaken. I would look at Keel at New Mexico State, an offensive-minded guy. They're 9-3 right now, 8-3. So I'd look at those guys. I'd look for an offensive-minded guy. Maybe even try to go get, maybe Kendall Briles or somebody like that. And I know Art Briles, the whole situation there at Baylor, I get it. But Kendall Briles was not his dad. I would go seriously consider Kendall Briles. But in closing, Rob, I do want to talk about this Mississippi State coaching search. I have a lot of confidence to say that Jamie Chadwell will likely be the next head coach at Mississippi State. I think Jamie Chadwell is the top target. Everything we've been told, everything that we're hearing out of both Liberty and at Mississippi State says the interview went really good. Obviously, there's some other candidates. They've interviewed Willie Fritz. Of course, they interviewed Jamie Chadwell. They've interviewed the coach at Texas State, or planning on interviewing him. I don't know if they've interviewed him yet or not. But it looks like Jamie Chadwell might be off for the Mississippi State job following the Egg Bowl and following Liberty's last game this weekend. So Jamie Chadwell would be, Rob, a hell of a hire for Mississippi State. I think he would fit the Mississippi State mold. He's a good Christian guy. He's a man of faith. He can recruit. He can obviously win. I mean, look what he's done at Coastal. Look what he's done at Liberty. So if Mississippi State can pull off the Jamie Chadwell hire, in my mind, it would be a home run hire for the Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Yeah, and he was at Coastal Carolina, now Liberty 1 year. That would be a good hire. He's been out there on the radar for a long time. And I like one more. Weekend Wayne in Auburn, who's supposed to have the Auburn team ready. Hugh Freeze failed miserably. The players, every coach, that's unacceptable. I mean, I'm just flat out the effort wasn't there, and the fans cannot care more than the players and the coaches. But that's absolutely unacceptable. Now you got Alabama coming in. I
promise you, Rob, that ain't happening again. Knowing Coach Freeze personally and being around him the way that I have for the last 20-something years, that's not happening again. That was a mistake on his end, and he'll admit it. I think he admitted it. I listened to the press conferences. But Auburn became complacent. Auburn became – they had that little bit of success. They went into Arkansas and blew the crap out of them. They had that success in them. They got a little cocky. They were looking ahead to Alabama. And really, truthfully, Rob, yes, it's a bad loss, but that New Mexico State team's a really good football team. I mean, they're sitting here at, 9-3 or 8-3, and they're competing in the Conference USA and doing really well. That's no excuse for it. But at least it's not losing to Sanford or an FCS program. So it could always be worse. But again, you gotta look at it and go, okay, hey, Nick Saban lost to Monroe early. I think he lost to you. I think you mentioned he lost to UAB early in his career. Yeah. Kirby had a bad loss in his first season at Georgia. So crap happens, but I can promise you right now that that's not going to ever happen again under Coach.
Well, I will say this: the reaction, and I get tons of texts and communications with Auburn people everywhere. Is now people are questioning him, and he's got to earn the respect of the fans back. And bottom line is, at a school like Auburn, if you even attempt to justify losing to a New Mexico State, you will slip into that abyss that you do not want to go into of hell. And the Auburn fan base, that's one thing you'll see among Auburn and Alabama fans, that those coaches do worry about their jobs every game. And you know, there's just things. Auburn coaches, no Auburn coach in the modern era has survived losing. at Ole Miss and Oxford. They only started playing them there since 1984, but the 4 coaches that have were not back the next year. And losing to Vanderbilt, 2008 and 2012, in those same years, you don't do it. Losing to New Mexico State as a 24-point underdog, as a favorite, is ridiculous, and that is completely unacceptable. And Freeze's comments after the game were about 14 seconds. He knows the wrath, but Auburn people are sick and tired, like every fan base is, of what they pay for the season tickets and all that other stuff. So, look, I'm an Auburn grad. No coach is bigger than Auburn, but you got to have standards. But that's, man, he there's a lot of people out there now going, holy cow. Now you got Alabama coming in. You better show up, and it changes the perspective. But look, Mitch, tell them how they can follow you. Got to get to Andy Humphrey from the Tiger up in Columbia, Missouri, but great stuff and insight. I really like it.
Absolutely. TheMitchDavisShow.com, on Twitter at MitchDavis_8. My podcast is on SoundCloud at The Mitch Davis Show. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Got Mississippi State basketball. They're 5-0 or 6-0. Rob, I need to come back on later this week to start.
I know we haven't been doing the Friday things lately. Have you been doing Friday podcasts?
So I've been working like crazy at my full-time job on Friday. I think this Friday I'm going to be off. So we'll have to record a podcast. I might be recording it from the Hump, but we're going to be there at Mississippi State basketball.
Right.
So a lot of great things. And I will say, I'm going to close with this. If you're a Mississippi State fan, hang in there. Basketball has a legitimate shot at reaching the Final Four this year. They're performing well without Tulu Smith, without a couple other key guys. Josh Hubbard had a big game yesterday. So a lot of exciting things are happening. Stark will hang in there. Rob, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving. Hail State.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, man. Great stuff as always. Mitch Davis, let's go to Columbia, Missouri. And real quick, watching Missouri play Saturday night, Andy, was really a exciting game. I imagine you were just like, holy cow, how much more of this can we take? But you're beating Florida. Florida comes to play. This is the second year of Billy Napier. They've got talent. They're sitting there at number 2 recruiting class in the country. The guys believe in that program. That's a marquee name. Missouri's 9-2. They refused to lose that game. I don't think there was anybody watching with me that doubted that Missouri would drive the length of the field. And then you've got the thicker kicker. I mean, that was great. Kicking the field goal. There was no doubt it was going through. And then I go back to the beginning of the season, a lot of the criticism. This is year 4 for Eli Drinkowitz, correct?
Correct, yep.
Yeah. I'm just listening to this guy. He's so calm, but he's won a lot, and he's been around some really good coaches. But how excited. That's 5 or 6 straight sellouts from Missouri. Kind of set the table for us here. Speaking of the tables, Thanksgiving week.
Well, yeah, and the momentum, of course, is undeniable with this season and how they've been able to win games like that when it was looking pretty bleak for the final 2 minutes or so. Florida had just taken the lead with a field goal. They had really come back from, I think it was like a 9-point deficit midway through the fourth quarter to come back and win that game. So yeah, Billy Napier's group was ready for that contest. And of course they were trying to get bowl eligible in that game. And so it seemed pretty fair to believe that Mizzou was going to get their absolute best shot for this. And turns out they did. And Mizzou somehow, some way, I mean, we've seen Brady Cook take steps forward this year. We've seen him at quarterback just really run the offense a lot more efficiently, take some more shots downfield, just play with a lot more confidence. Throughout most of that game, I thought he was just kind of okay, though, because, I mean, he made some good plays here and there, but I thought there were some missed reads throughout the game where it's like, well, maybe this isn't the Brady Cook game that we were used to seeing. But then all of a sudden on like 4th and 17, which is going to be a play that Mizzou fans remember here for a while, he finds Luther Burden. They get past midfield. They get into field goal range with that. Just that one play. If they had brought Harrison Mevis on for a 50+ yarder. I think he's making that too. But I mean, they wanted more. They stayed aggressive, and they found another receiver downfield. I believe that time it was Mekhi Miller. Get him to about a 40-yard field goal, and then you're looking at 13 seconds. You don't have any timeouts. You're like, well, probably this is where you maybe play it safe and you kick it now so that you don't risk losing time without a timeout or anything. But they keep going. Like they find another guy down the sideline, Mookie Cooper, and they make it a chip shot essentially. So I mean, just the confidence, the trust in Eli Drinkwitz and the coaching staff in Brady Cook to make those types of plays, to still make them aggressively, but also do it in the smart fashion at that situation. It's just a testament to how far this program has come. Because last year, I don't think they win a game like that. I think Florida, if they come back and they take a 1-point lead with 90 seconds to go, I don't know if Mizzou drives down the field and gets the game-winning field goal. Like, it just seems that this year they're a lot better at those late situations and just finding ways to win even when they don't play their best.
Yeah, and they don't get rattled. Brady Cook was getting booed early in the season, and then here he is. Just Missouri quarterbacks are good. They are Drew Lock. I mean, there've been a bunch of them over the years, and I think people are getting familiar with the St. Louis trio. I like this. Missouri's building a solid program. Hell yeah, they are. Frank talked about the importance of St. Louis in recruiting, because Eli Drinkwitz talked about building that border, that wall around Missouri. And I just look at these guys from St. Louis. And remember, East St. Louis used to be a powerhouse football program. I mean, for years, they were sending guys all over the country. Talk about those St. Louis kids, how many of them there are. And when you talk about St. Louis, and you know this, there are 35 nice suburbs of St. Louis, and they all play football.
Oh, yeah. It's a hotbed for sure. And I think the exact number, somewhere around 16, 17 kids, I think, on the roster that are from the St. Louis area. But yeah, I mean, Brady Cook's from there. Luther Burden's from there. Those are the two big names. Cody Schrader, the running back that's all of a sudden leading the SEC in rushing. He went there. Of course, it's kind of weird how it all comes together, because he first went to Truman State and then found his way to Mizzou. But still, St. Louis is kind of the foundation of that. But even when you look at some of the other players, like Mookie Cooper, one of the guys that made one of those late catches, also a St. Louis native, their true freshman tight end that's been kind of a revelation this year, Brett Norfleet, also from the St. Louis area. Like, it seems like the foundation that Eli Drinkwitz is building in recruiting is starting to take some shape. And you're also seeing a lot of those kids come locally, not just St. Louis, but also from the Kansas City area. And they have a big recruit coming from KC for next year's class, the 5-star guy, Williams Winery. So, I mean, it does seem like Eli Drinkwitz from day one, like the first opening day press conference when he first took the job in December 2019, like, one of the first things he said, like, lock down the state. We have to recruit in-state first and foremost, and just make sure that we lock down the borders as much as possible, because there is a whole lot of talent in those two big metro areas.
Yeah, 17 kids from the St. Louis area. Now you know, Georgia, you can say maybe there's 6.5 million people in the metro Atlanta area. Yeah. But 17 right there. And those kids were going to other places. I want you to talk about how big a deal Luther Burden is as a wide receiver.
How much time he got? I mean, he's been one of the best players, I think, period, that's come through this. If you talk about pure talent, you can see right away that, you know, in a couple of years, once he's draft eligible, that he's starting to get those big evaluations once they do come around for the NFL draft. I mean, he has been kind of the leader of, I think, a very improved wide receiver unit as a whole. There are a lot of other guys around him. They added from the portal in the offseason. They have tried to work in a few younger guys, some freshmen, sophomores. But it sure seems like Luther Burden, with the way that he is just so versatile. They bring him on jet sweeps. They toss forward. They just use bubble screens, and they also just throw deep. And he showcased this in this past game, the way that he can make contested catches and also make plays in the open field. He not only made catches under deep coverage, but also broke the tackle away and got 15, 20 extra yards on that same play. And so, I mean, it's hard to describe how important he's been to kind of the development of this offense. Brady Cook absolutely has been has made huge improvements in his own game and stepped up in big ways. But also, you have to realize that the connection between him and Burden, it's a two-way street, and the way that he's been able to make himself available for Cook, make plays in the open field so that it's not making it too difficult on the quarterback to get those explosive plays. I mean, Mizzou's offense looks a whole lot different with, Kirby Moore utilizing these guys in the right way. And I think we've seen the full potential of a guy like Luther Burden in his sophomore year.
Yeah. I mean, he's sitting there with a bunch of receiving, 1,142, I think, receiving yards. And he's a third leading receiver. I'm just looking at the stats right now, but to be exact, he's 1,142 yards receiving. Just ahead of him is Xavier Leggett, wide receiver, South Carolina, 1,187. And then Malik Neighbors at LSU, 1,424 receiving. Those are just really incredible numbers for receivers. Then look at the leading rusher, Cody Schrader. His numbers are getting pretty good, 1,272 yards. And this is in an era of a lot of players willingly submitting to the running back by committee mindset, because they want their bodies to be able to last longer. Because most running backs in the NFL, if you get 3.5 or 4 years out of there, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I mean, at first we were thinking before the season started that they would keep going with the running back by committee because they knew they liked Cody Schrader, bringing him back for his final year of eligibility, but they also liked Nate Pete, the Columbia native who had transferred in from Stanford as well. But it just seemed very clear that through the first few games that Cody Schrader needed to be kind of the bell cow going forward. And we have seen Eli Drinkwitz kind of break away a little bit from, what you're describing a little bit, the running back by committee approach, but he's had talented enough running backs to just kind of keep going with them game after game. He started at year one, he had Larry Roundtree, who would average, I think, around 20 to 25 carries per game, and rightfully so, because he was racking up the yards. The year after that, Tyler Beatty got a similar type of workload and ended up breaking the single season rushing record for a Mizzou running back a couple of years ago. And now I think 2 years later, he's got a guy like Schrader who just, it's so hard to bring him down sometimes. I mean, he's built up his body, really worked well with strength and conditioning. And again, just the hard work for a former walk-on like him coming from D2 just seems like it's really paid off, and just decided to bet on himself, and it's ended up providing the results for him. So, I mean, I believe I think the exact number is 333 yards away from Tyler Beatty's record that he set a couple of years ago, which, I mean, hard number to get to with only one regular season game left and a bowl game remaining. But, I mean, again, last couple of games, he surpassed that total. He has over 360 yards of rushing over the last couple of games. So if you just take that average, then he might have a pretty good shot at it with the way that he's running. It's just it's unbelievable how much of a part of the offense he's become too, because I don't know if it's something that we all really expected going in. We knew that this passing offense was taking a lot of the load early in the season, but then when they started to get Schrader going a little bit more, they decided, what, it's working. Let's not go away from it. So and Schrader's taking that opportunity and run with it.
Yeah. And you look at the talent right now, let's talk about Missouri's recruiting class. December signing period, we're talking December 20th. We're looking at, 30 days from now. And where do they stand? And also, I want you to expand on the importance of the in-state NIL program. Again, if you're an in-state kid and you sign with Missouri, you can start receiving NIL benefits if you've got a deal worked out while you're still in high school. Correct?
Yeah, and it was just updated this past summer. So yeah, I mean it's a lot earlier than a whole lot of other places. You typically have to wait until you're on campus to get those NIL deals worked out and eventually start making that money. But yeah, you can now, once you sign, either on signing day or even like there have been interpretations to where all you have to do is sign a financial aid agreement before you even sign your letter of intent. And maybe that even counts. So you can earn NIL that way. But I mean, it has made a huge difference to tell some of those in-state kids, like, look, there's ways that you can benefit yourself before actually stepping foot on campus and start to earn those dollars a little bit earlier than you would. But I think what's also been huge is this season, because Eli Drinkwitz did have to kind of show that he can win here and that the results that he was trying to sell earlier that hadn't really shown up yet, that they actually can be a reality. So, I mean, you can ask every individual recruit how important it is to them that Mizzou's 9-2 right now instead of maybe, 6-5 at this point in the season. But it sure seems like the momentum that they have with the way that they've won these games and how they've impressed on the national stage, even sometimes in losses, namely the most recent loss they had against Georgia where they pushed them all the way to the wire. I mean, it's that type of momentum is almost, it's really tough to buy. And so Eli Drinkwitz was searching for that, I'm sure, when he's going into these homes and trying to sell to these recruits of why they should stay home and play at Mizzou and make that a powerhouse. So, I mean, right now the recruiting class is looking pretty good. I mean, if you compare it to the rest of the SEC, they're probably still around middle of the pack, maybe below the bottom, the top half. But I mean, the boost they got from getting the 5-star Williams Nwaneri was a huge thing. Maybe they have some surprises coming later on in the last 30 days of this period, but we'll just have to see. It has looked a lot better though, with how the last couple of recruiting classes that were ranked pretty high are starting now to staff the team and build the foundation that Eli Drinkwitz was envisioning.
Yeah, I mean, he's a smart guy. He's from Alma, Arkansas, which if you know anything about that state, on I-40, right before you get to Fort Smith and the pig trail up to Fayetteville, that's where Alma is. And he's worked for some pretty smart coaches. He was 11-1 his 1 year at App State. That's a program that's got a lot of tradition. And he's quietly building something really strong. Before you get to this question about, Rob asked about Missouri basketball, got another one here. I got to ask you, do you think he's going to make any staff changes? Is there an area that you're concerned about that he may do something for next year?
Hard to say now. I mean, it's always possible. It just seems that in college football this day and age, you're bound to have at least one different assistant coach than you did in the past year. I don't think he would be the one maybe initiating those changes. I could see a possibility where, one or maybe even both of his coordinators get some interest from other schools about maybe being a head coach. Kirby Moore's done an excellent job as offensive coordinator in his first year. I might be surprised by that because he's just it's his first year in Columbia and he hadn't had a whole lot of experience beforehand of being an O coordinator. But I mean, the right situation, you just never know. Same thing with Blake Baker. He was already getting that interest last year, and they gave him a contract extension to kind of delay that a little bit. But I'm sure he's going to get the calls once again from the outside. But I'd say if there were any changes, I'm not necessarily sure that Eli Drinkwitz would be the one making them. He might just have to make them because an assistant coach gets an opportunity elsewhere. Yeah,
and I was going to say on that question, I think I may have typed it in wrong. It came in on a text, but bottom line, is he going to lose any people is what you're really concerned. And you know what? If your coordinators are really good, you have to expect that every year.
Right. Yeah.
And the good
That's a
coaches,
good thing, it means their team's good.
Yeah. Because when I talk to head coaches, Tommy Tuberville told me this 20 years ago. I asked him, I said, do you just go around in your back pocket with a list of, the top coaches at every position, the top 5 or 10? He goes, yeah, I do. So where'd you learn that from? He said, Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Erickson, Larry Lacewell. That's what you do. And Eli Drinkwitz seemed like he'd probably be a fun guy to work for, but I think he looks like he's got a trigger too. You better be with it. He has fun, and you can do that as long as the work's being done. But one thing I guess you didn't say it, and I'll say it, give Missouri credit for player development. Just like up at Iowa, Matt Dean's on with us. He's an Iowa Hawkeye, grew up in Davenport. His son Tyler's on the staff with Dan Lanning out at Oregon now, but developing those players. They may come in as 3s, but you can get them to 4 and 5 status. That's what I see with Missouri, and I see a really tight-knit team and a fan base that is just starved. They're hungry. 7 straight sellouts or whatever. I imagine season ticket sales are going up. Here come the donations. Here comes enrollment. And then there's questions. Is Missouri really a Southern? Hell yeah, I know the Boot Heel pretty well. And I've been to St. Louis 20 times. Spent a lot of time up there. They love being where they are, I would think. And that they need to keep playing a game like Kansas State. I think that's good to keep those relationships up there. But I think they are dialed in like, hey, man, we're 9-2. They got Arkansas Friday at 3:00. 10-win season. So you'd probably have to go back to 2013, 2014 when they won those 10 games. This is
they had back-to-back 10-win seasons those years. Yeah.
So and they own that state. I mean, I'm sure Eli speaks all over, but Kansas City on one side, St. Louis on the other, and in between, you're 107 miles from St. Louis. 17 kids on that roster, and that's just going to expand. That's going to be the thing to do.
Yeah, it's just going to get better that way. And all the momentum that they have from, again, selling out the stadium, which, it was clear that at first, those fans were buying those tickets because really all they had was hope that things could be better. They hadn't had a win like the Kansas State win that they had, I think, since Eli Drinkwitz had been there, or maybe it had been a while in the last couple of years, of just going 6-6 were maybe a little bit stagnant. So the fact that they not only sold out the building with the hope, but now there are more reasons to sell out the building because they're starting to show those results. You just know that can continue on into future years as long as you keep that up. And so, that's why the last few games have been so important for Mizzou to not only show that, look, we can sell out the building, we can create a good environment, but it can help our team to actually put the results on the field, and we'll give the fans a show. We'll give the fans a good reason to show up. And the last few weeks or so, with the ways that they've either competed in their games or had a blowout win over Tennessee or a very close win against Florida, no matter what, this team can find multiple ways to beat you, even when they're not playing their best. And so I think those types of evolutions that we've seen from this program, and again, as you talked about, player development is going to be huge because you can make some gains in recruiting, but I don't think it's hard to jump the Bamas and the Georgias and the LSUs in those rankings year after year. So you do have to find those pockets where you can get a good assistant coaching staff to develop the talent that you have into those NFL type players that you see that are almost ready-made for teams like Georgia and Bama and teams like that.
Yeah, you're right. Real quick, a little about Missouri basketball. What's the outlook for this year? And I love your take on it too. I love having you on here. And I think what I'm seeing is, and our listeners and viewers everywhere, they're asking, they said, we'd like to learn, more about Missouri. And you're telling us that. And I think what we're seeing too, watching the crowds at those games, they flat out love Missouri.
Yeah.
Their fan base is as crazy as anybody's. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
A good crazy,
Well,
you know
yeah, for sure. No, I get it. Absolutely.
I love seeing it, man.
You ask about Mizzou basketball. I mean, things were looking pretty good until maybe last night when they lost by 1 to Jackson State at home. But it was kind of lost a bit of focus in the final minute and a half. And Jackson State, who had not won a game yet this year, they came in at 0-5. But I mean, give them credit, because they've had to play on the road for pretty much their entire non-conference schedule, and that's not going to be done for a while. So, I mean, give them credit for coming in and getting a big victory. But from Mizzou's perspective, last year, I think, was a huge surprise. Dennis Gates in his first season. First of all, I think he's absolutely the right coach to try and build this program back up. And he's clearly shown that you can get immediate results right away. And they were having those sellouts in the basketball stadium last year, had however many straight sellouts for some of their conference games. And sort of the same thing like we're seeing with the football team this year. They were showing the results. They were finding ways to win, even if they were struggling through the middle portions of the game. I think this year's group, there are some veterans on this team. There are some holdovers. They did a little work in the transfer portal, albeit their splashes this year in the portal maybe didn't make as big of splashes as the year before. It might still be a little bit of time for some of these players to gel together. They're starting to play a few more freshmen. They had a larger recruiting class this year, and next year they're going to have 5 freshmen coming in that are all, I believe 24/7 Sports had them all as 4 stars. So, I mean, they've got an excellent recruiting class right now. It's ranked number 2 in the country by the 24/7 for next year. So, I mean, the hope is absolutely there. This year's team, though, I mean, you might see them make some splashes later on in conference play, but I don't know if you're trying to look at the standard of, you're going to be top 4 in the SEC, you're going to get a double bye for the SEC tournament, you're going to be a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament, you're going to win a game there and have a good shot at going to the second weekend. I don't know if they'll meet that necessarily this year. I'll say this. I think the goal should be making the NCAA tournament anyway. I mean, it's kind of reset those expectations a little bit for a second-year head coach after making it your first year the way that you did. But we'll have to see. The non-conference schedule is a lot tougher this year than it was last year. So there might be a few more stumbles to come before they get to conference play. But that's kind of the beauty of college basketball. Sometimes when you schedule well and you're a little more battle tested, sometimes it can help you down the road. And you just never know with this group. One thing I know is that I won't doubt Dennis Gates very often until I see more and more results like last night against Jackson State.
Yeah. I don't like late Sunday night games either. Especially
exactly right. Yeah.
I don't like them, but if you're going to lose it, you better lose early. Look, great stuff, man. You really know it. Tell people how they can follow you, and we'll have you back on again next week talking about some more stuff because you bring a lot of value. And I think, too, you're going for the 10th win. This is a big game for you. But, again, how do they follow you?
Yeah, I'm at Andy R. Humphrey on Twitter, on the Big Show from 4 to 6 on weekday afternoons, and that's at KTGR Big Show on Twitter.
The Tiger, man. Great stuff. Have a great weekend. Happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you again soon.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet. All right, Franz Beard joins us now, GatorbaitMedia.com. We're going to take a quick commercial break before we come back to the most interesting man in the world, along with Frank Duffy, talking in hour number 2, Monday's edition of Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with Franz Beer at GatorBaitMedia.com. And looking here are the daily thoughts, man. It's show prep. You ought to be subscribing to GatorBaitMedia.com. Holy cow, there's a lot of stuff on here coming out. And hey, we all miss the morning newspapers in a lot of places where you can physically hold it up in your hand. But I'm going to let Franz take over here. A few thoughts to jumpstart your Monday morning. Wow. Franz, welcome aboard. What a season. That was Andy Humphrey from the Tiger KTGR up in Columbia, Missouri, talking about what's going on up there. I mean, they're having a blast up there. And even if this is a Florida team that's lost a bunch of games, they're still Florida. And it's a big deal when you beat them. And that team has a lot of fight in them. They just got to plug in some players at the right positions. But let's get your takeaways.
Well, first off, as I wrote about the ball game Saturday night, I said this was a fairy tale. This was a fairy tale ending for Missouri, which their fairy tale extends because they've got a chance to go to New Year's Six Bowl. But you think about it. Had Mevis somehow missed that field goal, we would have had the Southern vision of the fairy tale version of the fairy tale. The one that begins with "Y'all ain't gonna believe what just happened." As it was, they had the fairy tale up at Missouri, which is this guy made his kick, and it's amazing how Florida lost that game. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. Your defense is standing there. It's 4th and 17. They got to throw deep. They don't have it. They've only got one timeout left, I think. Maybe they don't even have. Yeah, they only have one timeout left because they managed to shove Trevor Etienne out of bounds, and that saved a timeout. But that Luther Burden's going to get the football. You absolutely, positively know it. Why you don't put like a 240-pound linebacker who's a hammer on him at the line of scrimmage and make sure that he doesn't get 2 feet past the line of scrimmage? I don't know. But there they are in the middle of the field, and they throw it to him, and it's like all these guys are standing around. I wonder if he's going to catch the football. Of course he's going to catch it. Then they said, "Oh my, he caught it. Shall we hit him?" Okay, boom, 27-yard gain on 4th and 17. How can you give that up? You're rushing 4, you're dropping 7. How? And who's going to get the ball. How can you give that up? Blows my mind that they did that. Florida, their offense is just fine, Rob. You look at the last 3 games, they've averaged about 35 points, about 465 yards a game. You win games when you do that. You win football games with those kind of numbers. But when your defense is giving up 400 yards and 40 points a game, you lose. And that's what's going on. And it's mind-boggling. You know, we said last year, okay, we probably needed a new coordinator because Patrick Toney gave up all these big plays and everything like this. So we bring on a new coordinator, and the same thing happens. So I got to question this. It can't be, it isn't necessarily the coordinator. It's the scheme they're trying to run. And, you know, there was a time when schemes didn't matter. You could outstud the other guy. You know, you could line up what Alabama was doing in the 70s, and they just lined up. They had more studs than you had, and it didn't matter. You could run the wishbone, you could run anything against them. It didn't matter because they were just so superior with their personnel. We're in an era now where scheme does matter. You got to have the studs, but you better have the scheme too, because teams run these spread offenses with RPOs and all these other things that go on. You know, the offenses have gone exotic, and you better have a scheme that can handle the exotic. Just like you still have to have great personnel to run it, but you better have the scheme to go with it. And I don't think Florida's got the scheme to go with it.
Yeah, and look at the defense. Armstrong, people were raving about him early on. And as you mentioned in your daily thoughts, the last 4 games, the Gators have given up 167 points, 544 yards a game. I mean, do the math, man. That is 41.5 points a game. That's just – those numbers are unbelievable. And then Ricky Pearsall's 52 yards shy of 1,000 yards. He would be the first Gator wide receiver since Taylor Jacobs in 2002. You put it in Gator Bait Media. Man, this is just the offense is strong. And that Max Browne did look good Saturday. But I like Andrew in Birmingham. What staff changes will Billy Napier most likely be making? I mean, do you want to go through another defensive coordinator change? I mean, but
I don't think you're going to do that because, I mean, Austin has got to be thinking to himself, you know, I could be in Alabama coaching linebackers right now. But he's the coordinator. And again, after watching this, I'm not sure that it's necessarily the coordinator. I'm not sure it's that, you know, they upgraded the personnel this year, but they look like they did last year. And what does that tell me? That tells me the scheme doesn't fit what they're trying to do. They're not running a scheme that's capable of stopping the offenses they're facing. And, you know, Florida came here and Florida was running, for example, a 4-2, you know, they were running like a 4-4 when Steve Spurrier first came here. That's what they were running under Ron Zook, and he got demoted, and they brought in Bob Pruitt, who ran something similar but not great. And it wasn't until Bob Stoops came that they won championships. And what did Bob Stoops do? He put him in a straight 4-3 and took advantage of the personnel that they had. The scheme mattered because the scheme wasn't working before because they couldn't cover people. And you look at what they've done when they had the right personnel over the years. They've done very, very well. And they've always had personnel. Florida had better personnel on the field than Missouri the other day. Top to bottom, Florida had the best personnel on the field. But why did Missouri beat the Gators? Why did Missouri get 508 yards of offense and win the ballgame? Their schemes are better schemes. Their schemes adapt to their personnel. Their defensive scheme is a better deal for their personnel than Florida's. And Florida put 500 yards on them. Florida's putting yards on everybody, and they're putting points on anybody not named Georgia. But the problem is you got to adapt, and I don't see that they've adapted. When you're giving up the same plays this year as you gave up last year, and last year was historically bad. Florida was 6-7 last year, and a case can be made, and it's easy to make the case for a 9-3. You can really make a case for 10-2 if against Kentucky, but that was the game when the defense actually did show up last year, which caused us all to go into apoplexy because we didn't know it would happen. But I don't know, Rob. I'm miffed, and I think that Florida's got to adapt the scheme better. I do think there needs to be a staff change. However, I think he needs a special teams coordinator. And I say that there were no special teams blunders against Missouri, and that might be the first game they've played all season long when there wasn't at least one special teams blunder. So I think they've got to, the game has evolved too much. The special teams are too big a part of it. Urban Meyer, who was the Florida special teams coordinator during the Urban Meyer years? Urban Meyer.
Yeah, he's big on, that's right. He's one of the biggest believers in putting your best athletes on special teams, kickoff teams and all that.
He used to have this thing that said, if you want to be on the field, then you better be volunteering for special teams. David Nelson, who was a 5-star recruit, sat on the bench for a couple of years, and he finally goes to Urban and he says, look, everybody in the world wanted me. I was at Notre Dame. I had Southern Cal after me. I had all these people after me. Why am I not playing? And Urban said, why don't you try being on special teams and show what you can do? And he goes out there, and the first thing he does is he has a great special teams game. I believe it was against LSU, and changed the entire course of his career. He became a valuable enough player that who catches the touchdown pass that seals the win over Oklahoma in 2008? David Nelson. Who catches the touchdown pass against Alabama when the Gators come from behind to beat Alabama in the SEC championship game? It was David Nelson. But David Nelson got on the field because he got on special teams. And you got to create an atmosphere with special teams that your starters are begging to get on them. Percy Harvin begged to be on special teams.
Yeah.
Louis Murphy begged to be on special teams. Aaron Hernandez, I know that's a bad name for some people, but when he was here, he was a great football player. These guys all begged to be on special teams. And there was a reason. Urban used to tell our punter, our punter, he said, go in there and make it wet. In other words, bring rain with your punt. Florida in 2008, when they won the national championship, gave up 14 yards of punt return yardage the entire year. I mean,
what year was that?
2008.
Wow.
Chaz Henry was the punter, and Urban would just tell him, go in there and make it wet, and that was the thing. But yeah, I'll give you another example. 2006, the Florida-Arkansas SEC championship game. The game turns because Urban runs a trick play on special teams. Ball is snapped to Eric Wilbur. Eric Wilbur flips it to Jamal Cornelius on an end around. Florida did not score on even though they kept possession, they didn't score, but they punted again. And this time Arkansas, Reggie Fish, the little bitty guy, I think he was 3'2", is back there trying to catch a punt, and it bounces off him, and Pierre Louis recovers in the end zone. That was the beginning of the end for Arkansas that year. So special teams matter, and Florida's got to make a commitment to special teams. We've got a tremendous kicker in Trey Smack. He is a terrific field goal kicker. You got Jeremy Crawshaw is one of the best punters in the country. No question about it. But we're making too many blunders there.
Yeah. And you look around college football, special teams, they're getting neglected, not just at one school or two schools, but it seems like everywhere. A lot of teams, their kicker, it's like an afterthought. But special teams are about a third of the plays in every game, or they're about a third of the impact. So you better get it right. And I like Urban Meyer saying that. Special teams, you want the players fighting to get on the field. Franz, man, we got a couple of more months of college football till the national championship. It never stops. I mean, you know how this stuff is. We've been doing this for years. Because December 20th, the signing period is coming up. I go back to Thomas in Memphis. Will this class of 24 be enough to help the Gators win big next year? You got to throw in the portal and all. And you're talking about the Gators on the verge. I mean, they could potentially have a third straight losing season. It's just hard to imagine. But then I look at the line. Gators are plus 6.5 at home against Florida State Saturday. And Jordan Travis is obviously injured. I don't know for sure. He's not going to play Saturday, is he?
Jordan Travis may not ever play again.
He broke his ankle. It was a bad break, wasn't it?
It was, we're talking about a Joe Theismann type of injury.
Ugh.
When you've got announcers saying, I can't even look at this again. This, just looking at this makes, he'll be lucky to play again. He really will. And it's sad because he's a terrific kid. Absolutely terrific kid.
Great kid.
But the line, I believe, if Jordan Travis was going to play, would have been about 16.5. And I think that the fact that Jordan Travis isn't playing is they took 10 points off. And it also says that that the people in Las Vegas think that Florida's backup quarterback may be every bit as good as Florida State's backup quarterback. Max Browne, I thought, came in and showed tremendous poise. For a kid that had only thrown 7 passes to come in there and do what he did, really should have had at least 2 touchdowns. There was a fumble, and that was on him, and he did not get the ball in Trevor Etienne's belly. Should have, didn't. And he owned up to it. That's one of the things I loved about him was after the game, he was asked about it. He said, that was on me. He says, I didn't get the ball in his belly. He said, I hit his elbow with him, and that's why he fumbled, which is true. He did. But I think that Florida's offense has evolved and has become very good. At the beginning of the year, there were all these complaints and, well, they don't do this, they don't do that. But guess what? Look at what they've done. They've averaged 29.9 points a game, and that's while waiting and missing people like Trey Wilson for like 3 or 4 ball games, and they've had injuries on the offensive line. They've had bad production. I mean, Damian George is like a turnstile, which they played him at left tackle Saturday. Unfortunately, he got injured. I say fortunately because the Florida's game picked up when they put the backups in there. Damian George has been a disaster. And here's a guy that left Alabama because Alabama said, you got to play guard. You're not quick enough to play tackle.
Yeah.
And he came to Florida to play tackle, and guess what he proved? He ain't quick enough to play tackle. He ought to be playing guard. Now, you put him at 6'7" and 360 pounds at guard, you got a mauler in there. And he didn't, he's just not an outside guy. So they've got to go to the portal. The portal opens the day after the SEC championship game, or it might be the Monday after the portal opens. Florida, I believe Florida's got to find 15 guys, Rob. I think they got to find 5 offensive linemen. I think they got to find 5 guys who are front 7 guys on defense. And that's a combination of linebackers and defensive linemen. They got to find, and then they got to find 5 other guys who can play.
Yeah.
No matter what the position. They got a stud freshman coming in, quarterback in DJ Lagway. They got now Max Browne. And believe it or not, Graham Mertz has another year.
Yeah.
And he could come back, although I think he's played himself into like a late second or early third day in the NFL draft. I think he's he is the find of the portal this year. I don't think anybody can really question that he is he really has turned into a very, very, very good quarterback.
He has.
And I'm convinced that he is that Florida's been good for him, and he has been good for Florida. I think he's the unexpected transfer portal catch of the year. And think about this. Only Kyle Trask has put up better numbers than Graham Mertz since Tebow left.
Yeah.
That's saying something right there.
It is. Let me throw something else to you. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you got so much good stuff on your daily thoughts there. I want to get to what you say, your comments and your thoughts about the Heisman Trophy race, because we go back about Mertz, what Shane Matthews and you were saying back in the summer. That's why. I mean, you're right, but I want to do this before Wes Moore comes on. In the Heisman Trophy race this year, it's exciting. I mean, it's you say it's wide open, but it's not a year where you have a presumptive favorite and there's no suspense for sure.
Well, the way I look at it is you have one stud muffin and a bunch of mere mortals. And the stud muffin is Jaden Daniels. And from what I've seen, and I've watched these other guys, I watch a lot of football. I mean, I live a boring life because I watch so much football. It's amazing.
That's a great life.
and I got to tell you what, Bo Nix has had a terrific year, and you got to wonder why the hell they couldn't bring that out of him at Auburn. If they could have brought that out of him at Auburn, they could have saved a whole bunch of buyout money. I don't know why he couldn't play to that level at Auburn. And but he couldn't. He completed passes to the other team. He fumbled. I'll never forget. He comes there as a true freshman to Gainesville, and this is Kyle Trask's second game since he took over as quarterback. And Kyle Trask looked like he had been playing quarterback forever, and Bo Nix looked like he belonged back in high school.
Yeah.
It was that kind of difference. And this is 2 weeks after Bo Nix had rallied the troops to beat Oregon in a brilliant ball game. 2 weeks later, he's looking like he took lessons to play quarterback by mail order, and the mail was late. It was mind-boggling. But here he's gone to Oregon, and he's found great consistency. And I'm not taking anything away from him. He's having a great year. But he's also doing it against Pac-12 defenses.
That right there says more than most people realize.
Yeah. And Michael Penix, a Tampa kid. Holy cow. How did Florida let him get out? How did Auburn not go after him? How did Miami and Florida State not go after this kid? He goes to Indiana, which is like saying, okay, I get to finish 13th in a 14 contest beauty contest, 14 quarterback beauty contest. I'm 13th. Oh my goodness, how cool. He has blossomed in college. How did they overlook that? How did they not see that kind of potential in him? Florida never even bothered to recruit him. Auburn didn't bother to recruit him. Yeah. It's amazing. He's up at Washington. He throws a tremendous deep ball. I'm telling you what, there may not be two quarterbacks in the country capable of throwing a deep ball like him. But then you look at Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, my gosh, he is putting up Joe Burrow-like numbers.
Yeah.
If he had the 4 extra games, he's only got one more plus a bowl game, but Joe Burrow had a 12th game, the SEC championship game, and 2 playoff games. He had 4 more games. You look at the numbers that Jaden Daniels was putting up through 11 games compared to Joe Burrow. They're not that far off. My goodness. He is but Joe Burrow in his dream of dreams never ran the ball like Jaden Daniels. He is Houdini with the ball in his hands.
Yeah. Well, look, Wes Moore is going to join us, and I know he's got to get off early, so I'm going to go to him right after I say something about one of our sponsors, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. Folks, great-looking clothes, over 7,000 pairs of boots for men and women, kids' boots as well, largest collection of duck heads I've ever seen in my life, pants, shirts, jackets, blazers, vests, coats, you name it, they've got it. They're the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast. They've got the largest Filson order they've ever made this year. They've got STS. Watch Yellowstone, all those cool clothes the men and women on there wear. They're wardrobe consultants. One of the big ones is Schaefer Outdoors. They've got all the Schaefer, the Pendleton. They've got Rock Mount shirts, the Elvis, John, Ronald Reagan certainly wore those shirts. Bob Dylan wears them still today at 81, rocking and rolling my back pages. They have unbelievable collection of socks, Hiawassee, and all the thermo socks. And if you right now it's duck season, it's deer season, go get all your gear there. Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Now, starting this coming weekend, they will be open on Sundays 1 to 5, but normal hours are Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Charles Hall, his wife Laura, Raven, the whole crew out there, they're great people. We love having them as a sponsor. I love the clothes. I've got them all right now. They've always got a full selection of stuff. You go in there, it's like taking a drink of water from a fire hydrant. You can follow them. Go to our website. They will deliver anywhere, hewlettandunn.com. Wes Moore, ESPN 103.7, The Buzz in Little Rock. Go ahead.
Right quick. Wouldn't it be more of a sport if they gave the ducks and the deer guns and let them shoot back?
Somebody asked that the other day. Would you still go hunting if the ducks and deer could shoot back? Because, that's quite a challenge. And, hey, look, duck season started Saturday here in Arkansas. It'll go with the youth hunt till the first week of February. It's deer season. Yeah, that's a good question to ponder. But, Wes, man, Hogs got to win. And, winning's always better than losing. But let's talk about where they are going ahead the next year. And what did Hunter Urich say the other day about Sam Pittman? You hate going through coaching changes, but what are your takeaways?
Well, after the game, Hunter Urich addressed the team and told the team that Sam Pittman was coming back next season and he would be their head coach. And according to those in there, the team erupted and was very excited to hear the news. Arkansas fan base wise, I don't want to say it's split. I don't think it's 50-50. There's probably about 30% that, are upset about this and feel like he should have been fired. Then you got probably about 40% that want to keep Coach Pittman and give him another year. And then you got about a 30% that kind of understand what's going on. And that's, the money aspect of it, honestly. It was going to cost you probably somewhere around $20 million to get rid of Sam Pittman and all of his coaches. And then you got to go out and spend a bunch of money to get a new coach. And, Arkansas right now is just not in that position where they can be handing out that kind of money. It's not Texas A&M where you can write a check and it's no big deal. Arkansas's got some huge projects about to start. One of those being the renovation of Bud Walton Arena. That's desperately needed, and that's going to cost a lot of money. So imagine if you're Hunter Yurchek and you fire Sam Pittman and you're paying him off, and then you're going to these people, fans, boosters, everybody, and saying, hey, I need your money to renovate Bud Walton Arena. And they'll be like, well, you just fired a coach. You know, there's $20 million. You know, if you'd have made the right hire, you wouldn't be paying this guy off. Or if you wouldn't have extended his contract and gave him a contract that said, you know, with a certain amount of wins, he'll get a buyout of $18 million. So there's a lot working besides just wins and losses. You know, me personally, I mean, I get it. I understand the money aspect of it. And a part of me, I think Sam Pittman's a good coach. I think he made a bad hire with the, you know, Dan Enos. And then you throw on top of the offensive line issues. That's what you have this year. You have a team that's struggling to win games, and he's got to fix that. So I say give him a chance. If he can fix it, great. If he can't, then you'll move on.
Yeah, I had this discussion Saturday with a big Razorback friend over here at the farm, and I just said I would give him one more year too. And I said I'm not an Arkansas grad. You are, but going through these coaching changes every 3 or 4 years means you're going to be going through a coaching change every 2 or 3 years. You don't want to keep doing that. And I like this comment from one of our viewers in Memphis. Gary, give Sam Pittman the money to hire better coaches. I think he's got a hell of a staff on defense. I think they finally broke as the season went along because the offense was so dysfunctional. But Arkansas, you're right. You got the Bud Walton Arena renovation. There's a lot of other projects going on up there. And I know people love to spend other people's money, the Tysons, the Waltons, the Stevens. But again, it's not your money to spend, you know. And the A&M, they flush money down the toilet like the federal government. Arkansas doesn't do that. We all like Sam Pittman, and I understand that. But the goal is to win. But I do think had you had the right offensive coordinator, you know what I would do, Wes? If I were Sam Pittman, I'd go bring in the candidates to be the next offensive coordinator at Arkansas, and I would say to my current staff of assistants, I want y'all to interview the coordinator, and y'all interview him, okay? And we're going to find the right fit. That's how I would go about it. Am I nuts to recommend that, Wes?
Well, maybe you take some of those defensive coaches and let them interview them. I'm afraid the offensive coaches won't be around. They'll probably be hitting the door, too, with the new offense. I don't know who all they retain and who they let go on the offensive side of the ball. I would guess they try to keep everybody on the defensive side of the ball. I think they're pretty happy with those guys. No, I mean, you all have to work together as one unit. So, heck, I've been on job interviews before, and people inside, not just the big boss interviews me, everybody, you know, I had other people interview me and try to get to know me and see if I'd be a good fit for the newsroom. So it's not a crazy idea.
Well, here's the thing that has to happen is whoever you hire as the offensive coordinator, you have to give him the freedom to bring in his guy as the offensive line coach. And I think that's where they ran into the problems with Dan Enos, is they had the guy that's been there before as the offensive line coach, and they're bringing in Dan Enos with a totally different way of doing things. And I think it was a clash from day one. Dan Enos is a good football coach. He was a rotten fit there at Arkansas. And I got to hand some of the problem to the fact that he didn't get to bring in his guy as the offensive line coach.
Yeah, he didn't bring in anybody. I mean, they kept the wide receiver coach, the running back coach, the offensive line coach, tight end coach. Well, the tight end coach was new, but I think Pittman hired him. So Dan Enos didn't bring in any of his guys. It was just Dan Enos that joined the staff. So, it could have been some dysfunction there, and then it just didn't work with KJ. I mean, it just didn't. It's disappointing, and we all thought it was going to work. You know, and I've said this before, that people were critical of the Dan Enos hire. I didn't have one person, not one, when he was hired say, this isn't a good move. Everybody thought this was a good move and thought this was going to work. It didn't, and now it's time to start over.
Yeah, let me throw another one at you. And I used that example, and I'm saying you get the coordinator to come in and visit and meet with the current assistants. Again, you're right. All or some of them might be gone. But if you look at Arkansas, 2020, the year of the virus, they were 3-7. I picked them crazily enough to go 6-4 that year, and they were very close to winning 5 or 6 games. In 21, they went 9-4. They won a lot of close games. In 22, they lost those close games. And then this year, let's look at the losses at Alabama, at LSU, okay, Ole Miss. I mean, they are very close. And I like, I like this one here, Harris and Forest City. The Hogs are close to winning, get the OC hire right. Who are some names outside of, Kenny Guyton right now is the guy, but who out there would you be going after and from what staff or what conference?
That's a great question. I have not heard of any names, and I'm sure that's partly because they just found out, here.
Yeah.
How many conversations Sam Pittman has had. And I'll say this too, when he got rid of Enos and made the move to bring up Kenny Guyton, Coach Pittman told us that he had – I can't remember how many, I think he just said a bunch of phone calls and text messages from people interested in the job. So that tells, but he said, now's not the time to do that. Now's not the time. We've got to fit, we're inside the season. We got problems to fix. So that's his way of saying he'll deal with that when the season's over. So I would say maybe Saturday he gets on the phone and starts looking for a new offensive coordinator and touches base with some of those people who have already shown some interest in the job. But, there's a lot to decide. I mean, what about KJ? What's he going to do? What kind of system do you want? Is he your quarterback next year, or is KJ moving on? Is he going to the NFL, or is he going to test the portal and go somewhere else? So and it really kind of starts with your quarterback, right?
Yeah. Well, he's got some big NIL deals in state, KJ Jefferson does. And I think it'd be in his interest for the future, for his NFL future, to come back. But they've got to get this offensive coordinator hire right. And that's tough. I mean, they're not the only school that's going to have to go through this. So everybody will be fighting for those coaches. But you've got Missouri coming up Friday. That game is going to be in Fayetteville. Let's talk about that matchup and the matchups you're most concerned about on game day.
Man, I would say it's easy. It's the offensive line. The offensive line has had issues with everybody. They're going to have issues with Missouri. They did play better, but it was Florida International, guys. That's a struggling team. But for the first time in a while, I didn't see guys just running through and nonstop and hitting KJ. They did a better job of picking up the stunts, the twists, the blitzes. But I'm sure the stunts and blitzes and twists were a little slower than when you play against guys in the SEC, and they were able to pick it up. So that's where it all starts for Arkansas. Defensively, a little concerned because the defense has been playing so well. But they even gave up some big plays to Florida International the other day. But I'll tell you what, that receiver for Florida International is the real deal. He's good. I noticed the coach said he was so excited to have him back for next year. My first thought was, Coach, you better get an NIL deal for that young man in Miami, or somebody else is going to go and be using him next year because he's that good. He's a player. And isn't that strange how NILs change things? You start playing teams, non-conference games, thinking about, boy, somebody ought to go get that young man because he can play in the SEC. And I'm sure that guy's thinking it too when he's playing teams in the SEC. It's almost like you're recruiting or you're scouting for future players. But it's changed the game so much. But anyway, back to my point. Sorry, I'm rambling. Defensively, they've shown some holes in the secondary. Part of that's due to injuries. We don't know about one of the cornerbacks, if he'll be back. He missed the game against Florida International this past week. And so that hurt their depth, and that hurt some of their playmaking skills in the secondary. So maybe they can get him back. But I'll say this, Missouri's really good, obviously, one of the, top 5 teams in the SEC. I I think this game will be closer than people expect. I imagine it'll be a double-digit, point spread, somewhere like that. But I think Arkansas is going to play with some passion. And I think we used to see this way back in the day when they played LSU the day after Thanksgiving. And there were a lot of times where LSU was the much better team, and you're like, Arkansas is about to get blown out, and they play them close. And I have a feeling we're going to see that Friday, a much closer game than people expect.
Yeah, I would say so. Franz, you look at a game like this.
7.5 point spread, by the way, just for.
Yeah, what is the spread?
7.5.
Okay.
Huh. Okay, it's a little surprising.
I think everybody is looking at, just to be honest with you, I think everybody's looking at the fact that Missouri had such an emotional high to beat Florida. And the come down from that emotional high, I think that's got to factor into this thing, because I'll tell you what, Florida, they're going against Florida, a team that they're a double-digit point spread. They were, I think, 12-point favorites, and Florida had them down to the nubs. And I think that's going to factor into it for Arkansas. What if Arkansas plays at the level they played against Florida? It's white knuckles. Yeah. If they play at the level they played against Auburn, it's a blowout. I don't know which one you're going to get. Do you?
Oh, no. I mean, that's a
good question.
That's the SEC for you, man.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Auburn this week. I mean, Auburn, I thought, man, he's got Auburn turned around. Those guys are playing hard. They look good against Arkansas. And then I get a buddy I'm putting up Christmas lights Saturday before the Razorback game, and a buddy texts me and says, what does it say about Arkansas that Auburn's going to get beat by New Mexico? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I had to pull up my phone and see the score, and I'm like, oh, my God. This is crazy. That 1 week to the next, you just don't know what you're going to get. That's why you don't make a living betting on some of these teams. That's for sure.
I'll tell you what, if Mississippi State had a brain, they're going after Jamie Chadwell, and I don't think they're going to get him. He's making $4 million at Liberty, and he's got a job he can't get fired from. And I think if they were smart at Mississippi State, they go down to Las Cruces, New Mexico, and hire Jerry Kill, who has won everywhere he has ever been, and he knows how to win without having studs. He's the kind of guy that you got to have at Mississippi State. Dan Mullen won 8-9 ball games a year, recruiting 2- and 3-star guys, and that's what you're going to have there. Arkansas's got a better situation because Arkansas can get 5-star guys because they do have the money, they do have the facilities. You don't have that at Mississippi State. Jerry Kill's their guy. If you can win 9 ball games at New Mexico State, by gosh, you can win 7 in the SEC. That's my theory, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, and look, you know what, Wes? That's the first time since 1965 that New Mexico State has won more than 8 games. And, it's kind of like as an Auburn man watching that game, that failure of leadership on the part of Humphrey, the assistant coaches, and then the players on that team, they ought to be ashamed of themselves because they weren't ready. And they thought it was going to be some easy win. It doesn't work that way. I've watched Jerry Kill, and he's the Bobby Knight of college football. Jerry Kirby up in Clarksville, Tennessee, is telling us. And didn't he have cancer, guys? He was on death's door. He had a stroke.
He has seizures.
Okay, he has seizures. Okay, I knew he'd been through hell. And you know what? If you don't pull for a guy like that, love a guy like that that's overcome all that kind of stuff, gentlemen, something wrong with you. And Wes, you're right. I can't say on the show what I was saying watching the Auburn game because there are rules against that. But it was the most pathetic effort I have personally ever seen out of an Auburn football team. Now, my dad, who's 95, said, boy, you weren't at the Wofford game in 1950. Wofford, the Terriers beat Auburn in 1950, Wes. But look.
Did you throw anything at your TV? Is your team having to buy a new one today? Have you got
They had me on the watch. Just make it. Browne, you all right? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be okay. I spent a lot of time in solitude and deep meditation and thought. But Wes, I know you got a tight schedule today. Tell us, and you said you got to get off at a quarter till, but man, always love having you on. We got to get you on the video thing. Wes is a movie star, man. I mean, we got to get you on the video link when you're on in the future. Even if you're
looking on here, because it sure ain't me or you, Rob.
we got to get you, because he is the Fox Sports Channel 16 sports director. Does an awesome job in covering obviously the UCA Bears, doing their games for ESPN Plus, high school football, and everything. There's Big Wes.
There you go.
Are you in the studio now or at the Touchdown Club?
We're at Walk-Ons today, and brand new Walk-Ons in West Little Rock, and we're doing the show there, and we're going to be talking about this place. And man, this is my first time to see it. It is really cool in here. So
in West Little Rock,
West Little Rock, out by the huge Super Kroger, if you're familiar with that in West Little Rock. But no, tomorrow's the Touchdown Club. We'll be talking with David Cutcliffe tomorrow, but today we got Clint Sterner, Quinn Grovey. We're going to be recapping a big week, talking about the win, talking about keeping Pittman, and, we got some basketball to talk about, too, with the team going to the Bahamas, the Battle of Atlantis.
How did y'all lose that basketball game to UNC Greensboro?
It's one of those bad shooting nights. I think they were 1 out of 13 on their first three-pointers. And look, UNC Greensboro's got a good team, and they played well. And Arkansas wasn't ready. They were probably looking ahead to their trip to the Bahamas, and they got beat. And you know what? That's not always a bad thing in basketball, because I know Coach Musselman is using that all week to get them ready.
Yes. Now, hey, did they move the Touchdown Club meeting from Monday to Tuesday this week?
They did. It was a scheduling conflict, and Coach Cutcliffe will be here tomorrow.
Oh, God, that'll be great. Look, Wes, thank you so much. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, you and your family. Appreciate you being on here with us. Wes, you still there?
Yeah. I lost you for just a second.
Yeah. Have a great Thanksgiving. I know that Friday game, it'll be fun to watch, but we'll get with you next week. Thank you so much. Y'all have fun at Walmart. All right. And that's the cool thing about it. Wes he's everywhere, covering the high school, covering
the Wampus Cats. I mean, you doesn't get any better than covering the Wampus Cats.
Yeah, because you go over there to Conway, where University of Central Arkansas is. The Wampus Cats are the high school, and then the Bears are the college. But now that is great stuff, man. And I tell you, watching Jerry Kill in that game, I just you have to call it and say what you think. Don't sugarcoat it. They got a good team. I watched them all year long because I knew Auburn had to play them. But I thought New Mexico State would cover, but I didn't think Auburn would lose to them. I thought they'd be excited and fired up. Granted, beating Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas is not the same as beating Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. Okay, I understand that, but a lot of they got the Iron Bowl this week. But hey, great stuff today. We'll go ahead and knock out early, but I got to tell you, if you take a look at what's going on in college football, friends, who are the best coaches out there? Who are the hottest assistants? Glenn Schumann at Georgia. He's part of that three-headed monster that coaches defense. Mike Bobo. Yeah. Mike
Bobo deserves a real job. And I'm going to tell you right now, if Texas, he wouldn't be the sexy hire, and I'm afraid, and Texas A&M is probably going to go for the sexy hire. But the two guys that they need to be thinking about at Texas A&M are Mike Bobo and Mike Elko. Now, Elko has been there before, but if I'm the people there at Texas A&M, do I necessarily want a guy that was tied into Jimbo for 4 years? And I don't know that I do. I think he's a good football coach, and he does have the ties to Texas. But do I want a guy that has the ties to Jimbo? Mike Bobo, you look at what he's done with that Georgia offense, and that Georgia offense, quite frankly, is absolutely lights out.
They are. They are.
You look at Georgia's offense, number 4 in the nation, 501.8 yards per game. They were number 5 last year, so he's improved them from one year to the next. You're number 4 in total offense. You're number 9 in total defense. You think they're pretty good? I do. I hate Georgia, but I got to tell you what, the Poodles are pretty damn good.
Yeah, they really are. Look, I mean, you've got to show up every week too, and that's the job of the coaches. The players ought to have enough pride to not think that a team that you're playing that gives scholarships is wanting to whip you. You know, that's just ignorance. And I hope the lesson gets through. We all know about some terrible losses that teams have had, but I mean, New Mexico State's good, but if at Auburn you ever justify losing to New Mexico State, your program will decline, and that won't happen at Auburn. I think the people have let it be known this is unacceptable, and I hope, like Mitch said, it'll never happen again. But big rivalry week, folks, and get out today. Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis. Remember, no vehicle payments until 2024. They got tons of used, pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs on the lot. Brand new Fords and Toyotas. You got to check out those new Toyota Tundra TSS. Great looking, the 4-wheel drive, the off-road packages. The back seat is the biggest back seat of any truck I've ever been in. The F-150s, the F-250 Power Strokes. Service department open Monday through Saturday. Saturdays open 7 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And great folks at ECS House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. It is harvest time, folks. Still going on. All that big farm equipment that you see out there, the technology, a lot of it is made in a 99,000 square foot warehouse in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, right in the heart of the Delta between Jonesboro and Wynne, and their reach is worldwide. They also make the aerators for the catfish farms. If you love catfish farming and you love eating catfish, thank the folks ECS House Industries. Check them out on our website. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Folks, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Thanksgiving's coming up here Thursday. We got a lot going on this week. We'll be back on tomorrow. We'll try to solve all the world's problems from 8 to 10 a.m. Central as we do every day. When we got Franz on, we got a pretty good start. And if I were you, I would subscribe to GatorBaitMedia.com. They put out great content every day, and check him out on the Buddy Martin Show at night, Monday through Friday. It's on YouTube. And Franz, this was a fun one as always. That Florida State game, I'll just say this. Don't get cocky and think Florida State's going to go in there and roll. I've got a son named Max Browne. He has an E on the end of his name. But Max Browne, the only thing you got to worry about at Florida is he's so good, DJ Lagway's going to be worried. But the great ones love competition, don't they?
DJ will be here. And the question is, will Graham Mertz be back?
Yeah.
Which he could. I think he's going to go to the NFL. I think he'd be smart to go to the NFL because he's proven that he can do it. And if he came back and then had a year that wasn't quite as good, his draft stock would fall. I think here's the thing that Florida's got going for them. This is going to be as loud a place as there is on the planet.
Yeah.
Saturday night. I promise you it will be as loud. Or, I've been to Baton Rouge, and Baton Rouge is loud. It really is loud. But I guarantee you there is no place on the planet louder than the Swamp when it's rocking, and it will be rocking Saturday night. And Tate, it's got Max Browne has been there before. He knows the sounds. Tate Rodemacher, who is the guy that FSU is bringing in there to play quarterback. And again, I feel so badly for Jordan Travis. I really do because he's a tremendous kid. Was coached in high school by Eric Kresser, former Gator quarterback who went on in 1990. Here's a good trivia question for you. Who was the quarterback for the 1996 Marshall team that won the Division I AA championship And who was the head coach there? And where were they the year before?
It was the quarterback from Knoxville, Tennessee, Chad Pennington.
No. Eric Kresser was the quarterback, throwing to Randy Moss. And the coach was Bobby Pruitt, who had been fired after his famous meltdown. When the Gators played Nebraska, it was like he's up in the booth with the defense. What? You mean they're running the damned option again? Well, that's all they ever ran. But Bobby Pruitt was kind of like, oh my God.
Yeah. Hey, we run out of time, but no, that was a great trivia question. All right, I'll call you here shortly. Great stuff, folks. We'll be back tomorrow. A lot of college football to talk about. Go to our website, support our sponsors. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.